In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create collision objects from your high-resolution mesh. Now, you can use your high-res mesh to do your cloth sims, but they're going to take much longer because there's a lot of detail that is just not necessary when you're doing a cloth sim. For example, as you can see here in the elbow area, there are a lot of long, thin faces that basically really aren't going to do anything to help your sim look any better or deform any better. They're just basically going to make your sim take longer. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this cylinder right here, and we are going to wrap this cylinder to this mesh using a script that is being shipped with the DVD called Conform wrap. First thing we're going to do is we're going to collapse this cylinder to an editable poly. Then we're going to take the end caps and we're going to go ahead and delete them. Now the reason we're doing that is the way that Conform wrap works, or skin wrap or shrink wrap, there's 3 flavors of it, is it's going to shoot a ray in the positive and the negative Z of each vert. Then what it'll do is it'll flip the faces of your mesh, it'll flip the normals, and then again do positive and negative Z. The reason it's called Conform is it'll do all 4 rays and then find which one is the shortest and then move the vert to that point on that mesh. If you have these end faces on, what ends up happening is the normals of these verts are like this. So they're going to shoot off in the wrong direction. So with that said, all we're going to do at this point is we're going to throw an FFD 4x4x4 onto this cylinder. Go to subobject mode, and we're going to go ahead and start scaling and moving these so that they roughly fit the mesh. So you don't need to spend too much time on this because it's really not important for it to be exactly dead on. If anything, just make sure that the faces or the normals aren't pointing off in a crazy direction. So you don't want to do something like this. You know, you want to keep it nice and, straight, because when you're using a cylinder, all the verts are going to be pointing pretty much straight in. So let's just scale these in. Again, it really doesn't have to take you much time at all. Just do it quick. Go to top view and let's just adjust these a little bit more. Okay, and we're going to move this here. Scale it in a bit more. Move this down. Scale it out. Okay, now I'm not going to collapse this down, although I can, but in this case, what will happen is sometimes you'll run the Conform wrap and you won't like it, so you'll just redo it. So we'll just leave the 4x4 modifier on there. As you can see, it's passing through the mesh, but it's roughly going with it. It doesn't have to be exact. So we'll select the cylinder, of course, and then we're going to go to our wrap tools. We're going to use Conform wrap. Now we're going to select the mesh. Now you can use multiple mesh objects. So if you had a collision object that you wanted to span across a couple different objects, you can do that. You would just need to select all the objects that you want to conform to. So we'll go ahead and hit Conform, and it's going to go ahead and do the processing. While we're waiting for this, just to say, it's okay to have a lot of faces when you're doing your collision objects. It's just more important that they're all the same size and they're all roughly square. A lot of times people want to use as few amount of faces as they can. And what ends up happening is the sims can, believe it or not, take longer because they're running into more problems. But if you have more faces, there's more things for cloth effects to see, more polygons. So you end up getting better sims out of it when you throw more faces into it. Don't go crazy, but when you have a good amount of faces and a good amount of faces in your cloth object, you're going to get much better deformations and much more reliable sims. Okay, so we're done running this. As you can see, I've got a morpher on here now. It's called Conform Morph, but it's just a regular morpher. And the reason I do that is it's just an easier way to undo. You can basically kill the morpher object and have that, or you can zero it out. What you can also do is Conform wrap also works on subobject selection. So what you can do is, collapse this down to an editable poly, and if there's an area that you want to redo, you would just select those verts and rerun the sim. But let's take a look at this. I'm going to go ahead and collapse this to an editable poly now, and let's just move this up and out of the way and do a little quick comparison. So as you can see, the two objects, the topology is identical. But if you look at the faces and the face count, you can see they're completely different. You've got all this detail in here that is pretty much represented by the same, with the same topology with much fewer faces. And the faces are all roughly polygons. Well, they're all polygons in this case. They're all polys. And they're all pretty much as square as they can be. Of course, you're going to scrunch up a few things here and there, but that's okay. You just want to roughly get it the same. So what you're going to end up with when you run a sim is you're going to have a nice, smooth object with much fewer faces than in your original object. And then what you would do at this point is you can either skin wrap this mesh to this mesh, or you can copy the skin modifier from this mesh to this mesh. Now in my case, pretty much all of my deformations are done with envelopes. Hopefully I will do a rigging DVD as well and show you exactly what I mean. But rather than doing any vertex weighting, I will add objects so that I don't need to add, I don't need to do any vertex weighting. I just add more envelopes, which will cover more areas. And in the case of doing cloth sims and collision objects, it makes it a lot easier because then I can just copy and paste the skin modifier and then delete the actual original mesh. So what I end up with is a master cloth file that has just collision objects and cloth objects in it, and then you run the sim. That's it for this tutorial. It's very simple. You just run your conform wrap on your original on your cylinder. You get it to match the original mesh, and there you go. Now, the other way that you could do this, let's just say I wanted to do this with, if I'm trying to span across separate body parts, let's say. So I'm going to take a cylinder, and I'm going to go ahead and just rotate this out. And we'll just move this into place. I'm going to just basically show you how you could do this on separate body parts at the same time. Or basically span across separate body parts, and then you can stitch them together in any modeling way you see fit. So we'll just do that. Obviously don't need as many faces. and just put that like so. Okay. Basically wrap it around just the forearm. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a copy of this, save a little time, and we're going to make it a little shorter and rotate this around. I just basically want to give you the idea of how you could do this across different body parts. In this case, using one cylinder obviously is just the better way to go because the armor is relatively straight. So you would pretty much just use the one cylinder. Now, the thing that's really cool with conform wrap is if you're using a cylinder, like in this case, you can take the radius down to like that and just basically take it from the joint of the elbow to the joint of the wrist. And that way, when you collapse this to an editable poly, you can go ahead and, I'll show you, we'll just delete these end faces. Okay. And then we'll run the conform wrap again. Select that monkey arm. It won't take as long because there aren't as many verts to calculate. But this is cool because you can just use a little cylinder. You don't have to worry about shaping it or anything. And then when it's done, you have something that's relatively close. And you can see I didn't have enough faces in there to really get the detail covered. So I'm just going to kill that. We'll go to editable poly and we'll select these edges and we'll go connect. And maybe I should just do it one more time. Connect, and let's see, let's do one here. Connect. Okay, so now we've got a little bit more detail to work with here. So we'll run our conform wrap again. Select the monkey arm again. Hit conform. Again, since it's a cylinder, the verts are pointing straight out. So you can just put little cylinders in each part of the body and then just stitch the cylinders together. And all done. So there you go. Now you can see how this is, covering the the mesh itself a lot better. It's going with the mesh a lot better, the topology. The one thing that you can do once you're done with that is, let's collapse that to an editable poly. Let's go ahead and put a push on it, so you kind of get a little built-in. You know, hold down Alt so you can roll it slower. And basically, you get your own little offset. You see, that way, you know that you already have an offset built into your collision object. So if you set your offset to 0, you'll still be okay, but you never want to do that anyway. So let's go ahead and do the bicep here. Let's go ahead and tweak the settings on this. See if it's rotated. Okay, and we're going to lower the radius, and we're going to do the conform wrap again. Now, if you use cylinders that have the same side counts, then you won't have any worries about trying to match up the polygons, because they're going to be the same. Now, you'll see how that kind of freaked out there. That's because I didn't delete those end faces, so those verts were pointing in weird directions. So we'll kill that, collapse it to an editable poly, freeze everything else, and we're going to go ahead and delete these end caps, and go ahead and unfreeze everything again. And we're going to run our wrap again, select the arm, let it continue. And now we have two objects that are roughly doing what they need to do. Now, obviously, there was a problem with this vertex. Why did that? I have no idea. So we'll just kill the modifier again. And I'm going to go ahead and just scale these out a little bit. Perhaps that's the issue. Okay. Either that or it didn't hit a face. And if it doesn't hit a face, then it'll take the only hit that it got, which was on the other end. So let's go ahead and conform that again to the monkey arm. It's a lot easier to use one cylinder like we did at the beginning, obviously, because then I don't have to rebuild anything at all. And there you go. You have your mesh all clean. So if we go ahead and freeze that, you can see we've got two objects that match up as far as how many faces there are, how many sides there are. And then you can stitch these together in any way you normally would when you're modeling. Actually, let's go ahead and collapse that. And let's collapse this. And we'll throw a push on that just to kind of match the other one. Okay, and collapse all. So we'll go ahead and attach these two together. Grab these, and then we'll connect these. We'll bridge these. Okay. So what you can do then is, obviously now, it's not going to, match up exactly. So what you could do is go to Edge Subobject Mode, grab these new edges that were just created, and then connect those. Then grab these verts, these newly created verts. Make sure you have them all. Okay. We'll just unfreeze that mesh, and we're going to run connect again, or conform wrap. Select that, and obviously it's going to go a lot quicker because it's only doing those verts. So it went and extruded those out to match. And to kind of match up with what we did earlier, we'll put a little push just on those verts. And there you go. And then we'll collapse that out. And we've got a clean collision object that we made out of two cylinders. So that's how you could connect multiple body parts together doing that process. Obviously, in this case, when we did it with one cylinder, it was a lot easier, but I just wanted to show the process of doing it across multiple objects. And that's it for this tutorial. See you next time.